Hello and welcome back to Cooking the Books with me, Gilly Smith, the podcast which takes us through 4 food moments from the books of our favourite food writers. It's about life through the prism of food. And this week, in the very first Cooking the Books live at Rockwater, Hove, an extra special extended episode, an audience with Guardian Feast columnist and author Rachel Roddy.
I mean, the pasta, I came to that later, the carbonara, matriciana, cacio e pepe, all these lovely classic Roman pasta. That wasn't what got my attention. Oxtail, tripe, liver, kidneys, jam tart, cream puddings, fried things.
As we revisit her newly reissued debut, 5 Quarters, Recipes and Notes from a Kitchen in Rome, we go back to that 32-year-old woman from Harpenden who turned up in Rome with little more than a travel toothbrush and a phone, planning to stay a month maybe before heading south and on in search of who knows what. What she found in Testaccio, the tiny corner of Rome where she put that bag down, launched a career as a multi-award-winning food writer. In front of an audience of fans, food writers and foodies, I asked her what it was that she found.
God, but this book, it's really funny. It's 10 years since this book was published. So 20 years since I moved to Rome. And almost immediately when I moved to Rome, I started writing diaries. So I moved in the March, I went to language school and I was keeping diaries. I mean, not particularly good diaries, but some notebooks. I was keeping, I don't know, receipts, hotel visiting cards, making notes, writing down things I'd eaten in a pretty ordinary way, the way that I've done all my life, but not particularly neat or in any particular order. And then 3 years after being in Rome, very settled, and we'll talk about this sort of later, a friend of mine suggested that I started a blog.
Because people were blogging at that time. It was a big thing, weren't they?
Yeah.
So this is 2005.
Yeah. So I moved there in 2005. And what kept me in Rome, I didn't want to stay. So I found a hotel quite near the train station. I'd been travelling in Sicily. And then I decided that I needed to learn some Italian because I had none at all. But also I had real resistance to learning another language. I'd been told when I was quite young that I had no natural ability at languages. And so I just registered that. And you know, I did French at school. And if you were good at French, you did German. If you were good at German, you did Latin. I wasn't good at any of them, so sort of stumbled around in French. So I decided that I would go to language school. So having arrived in Rome in April, I did 3 months of language school. And I actually did level 1 3 times, to the point when the head of the school called me into her study and said, I mean, this was a paying course. It wasn't like I was at the school. I was paying to study. And she said, you know, you can go to level 2. And I said, well, I can't because I still can't. I felt I couldn't do anything. So I think learning Italian was one of the first, the things that rooted me. I thought I could do this. I'd found a flat in a part of Rome called Testaccio. And I think probably after about 2 days, I felt like a local, which sounds probably a bit pretentious. But I think, you know, you go back to a bar twice, anywhere really. This isn't particular to Rome, is it? You know, but you go back somewhere again, a tobacconist, a bread shop, a bar. And I think that was what I think I very quickly felt at home in this.
So what was it about that particular, do you think it was because it was particularly Testaccio that isn't the typical sort of the centre of Rome? It's, you know, they didn't look at you as a tourist. I can't imagine going to any market in Rome or a bar in a market in Rome and people seeing me twice and getting into a conversation with me.
I don't know, though. It wasn't even like that, though. I mean, maybe it was all in my head. I mean, it's funny because I'm thinking about, I can't imagine I can imagine you in a bar going back a second time and feeling, you know, something is familiar, isn't it? I mean, going back anywhere for a second time is rather nice. It's like walking down a street. So maybe other people didn't consider me a local. I think it was obviously I was looking for something, wasn't I? I was 33 years old. I mean, call it what you like. Lots of things had ended in London. I'm so aware of sounding like a sort of tired cliche, but I was 32 years old. A relationship had ended. I was not working as an actress. I'd sold my house. I was really at a crossroads. And so I went away. I went to travel. I always remember a friend of mine saying, you know, you can't run away. I thought, well, I can.
What?
I just have. So there was that. So I think those were the circumstances. However, sort of cliched and tired they felt, that was where I was. I was 32. I was in Rome. I think not speaking Italian was a good thing because it put me in this rather strange state, which also I think later was good for my writing, because again that was another reason that I wrote, because that was a way of sort of thinking and understanding things.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually very eat, pray, love. You left a relationship, you were looking for something else, and it is that intention, isn't it, to go back to that bar and think, this is where I'm going to feel a little bit more comfortable. You're less likely to be backpacking, looking for the next adventure. You are looking for a little bit more of a home at that point in your life, are you not?
Yeah, I think that was it, wasn't it? Although I was going to say, when I sent this manuscript off to my first editor, so lovely Elizabeth Hallett, who published the first book, and they got my manuscript, and actually she did say to me, please don't write Eat, Pray, Love, Rachel. Please don't write it. Like, nobody needs another book like that from you. But nobody was. I mean, it was true. I mean, I think as a writer, I think it's true, that memoir, that talking about going to a new place, being there. Elizabeth gave me very good advice about that and said, that you've got all that for free, Rachel. What you need to start writing about is place and food and people, So, but yes, I mean, I was looking for somewhere to settle, but I do believe now that it could have been anywhere. In fact, sometimes I sort of wish I'd travelled further, but anyway, I ended up in Rome, and actually Rome is a very, it's a good city if you're a foreigner. It's a very inclusive city, actually, Rome. There's a lot of coming and going. I always think, when we laugh about or criticise, touristy places in Rome, it always makes my Roman friends laugh. They're like, what are you talking about? We've been dealing with hundreds and thousands of people every year for 2,000 years. Like, Romans are really, really good at dealing with pilgrims, whether you're a religious pilgrim or a social pilgrim or whatever your reason to be there, you're made to feel welcome. And my local trattoria is, I always feel, how many are you? 200? I will find you a table. So I think I sat down at that table in Rome. I think Rome is, I haven't experienced quite that in other cities in Italy. And I'm travelling for my next book at the moment, All 20 Regions, which is a real greatest hits book. But I haven't encountered anywhere like Rome.
But, you talk about the language, and we all try and find a way to communicate in the best way we can, and you did through food. To explain your relationship with food, obviously you talk about your grannies, and there's a sort of a real love of food, but actually it's pretty sort of English food, isn't it? Did you go to the market in Testaccio and suddenly just fall in love with the food? Or how did you kind of decide to really kind of focus on that as your language to get into that bit of the city?
That's a really good question. And this is really important because I didn't know anything about Roman food, really. I don't think I would have been able to tell you a typical Roman dish before I moved there. I'd been once to Italy when I was 18. I'd been to Florence. And so I had quite general ideas about Italian food. I think if you'd asked me dishes, I would have said lasagna. Bruschetta, and said it wrong. I would have maybe been able to think about parmigiana from the south. And but I had quite vague general ideas. Roman food was a total, utter surprise. I don't think I even really knew about carbonara and all this pasta. The thing that really surprised me, and I really remember this very well, is going in a trattoria, which is in the bottom of our building. And I remember having pasta and chickpeas, pasta ceci, which is a thick chickpea soup with pasta in it. And I'd also had lentils and pasta fagioli, these thick bean soups. And I remember that they seemed really strange. They weren't my idea of Italian food at all. This thick chickpea soup with pasta in it, scented with rosemary and lots of garlic, really simple, but very, very delicious and hearty. It seemed so strange, this dish. And then hunter-style chicken. I remember eating these classic Roman dishes, particularly the meat. I mean, the pasta, I came to that later, the carbonara, matriciana, cacio e pepe, all these lovely classic Roman pasta. That wasn't what got my attention. Lots of offal, oxtail, tripe, liver, kidneys, potatoes, peas, greens, broccoli, spinach done in a pan, chicory done in a pan, jam tart, cream puddings, fried things, fried salt cod, fried sage leaves, fried brains. I mean, it was that stuff. And I literally just thought, I fucking love this. And I was really excited. And obviously I was looking for something to be excited by. But it was that. And I really wanted to write. I really wanted to tell stories. And that was the stuff that really hooked me in. And I remember, so pretentious, writing these 2,000 word essays about pasta and chickpeas. And also, as you said, it really took me back to my granny's pub. So my granny had a pub called the Gardener's Arms in Oldham at the bottom of Durham Street. It was a beautiful old boozer. It was a Robinson's pub. And it had 5 rooms. So it had the main bar saloon, beautiful bar. It had a cribbage room. It had a darts room. It had a snooker room. And it had a saloon. It had with the jukebox in it where my granny would serve chicken in a basket. But anyway, in this pub, my granny, she ran it. Alice Jones, she was the landlady. And she would serve sandwiches. So they were called oven bottom cakes. So they were flat, soft rolls. And in them would be tongue, would be lingua, boiled tongue, or cheese. And then she would do pies, meat and potato, cheese and onion. Sorry, I'm telling you the entire menu of the pub. And Auntie May would sometimes do oxtail stew, and they would do chips, really simple food. And I remember going in a trattoria, again, another moment with a sort of ding, 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 ding. I remember going in a trattoria in Testaccio, family run, really old-fashioned, seats, toothpicks, wine, run by a family, kids running round, sort of over-romanticized it. I remember thinking, okay, I know this is like a pub. Yeah. This is just like a pub. This isn't a restaurant. This is like a pub crossed with a cafe. And I want to be here. And also, it was just like a pub, because that's what we're so good at in England, and I miss it so much. Because we've got the same hospitality as the Romans. I mean, we really have. And I think maybe I pushed this a bit far as a food writer, but, I love these two countries. Like my little boy, half Roman, half English. Like, I see them as being two peas in a pod, really. And so trattorias remind me of pubs. And so, when you go in a trattoria, you just feel, you go once, you're made to feel welcome. You go twice, there's your table. You go 3 times and your photo's on the wall. But, it's like it's that spirit of thing, which I think is not special to Rome. I think you meet that all over the place. And I think nobody needs romanticism about Italy from me, because, what we need is, we need stories that are about both. That was such a long answer to the question, but that's what, it was like those, I wanted it to, it was both.
I was looking for, the point of connection, and what anybody is looking for is appreciation. So, if you're talking to the publican in Oldham, who's going to be a granny, or the bartender in Testaccio, it's appreciation, isn't it? Wherever you go, the language is always going to be of love of some kind. And if you love what's on the plate, if you talk to people about it, if you ask questions about it, and I can imagine that you absolutely did, even in your most halting of Italian at that time, you showed some kind of interest, curiosity. And that's that sort of, we talked about this in the last episode of Cooking the Books. I asked Rachel if she felt very much like an observer. If you had to be on that outside looking in, if that's what gives you the voice that led to the blog Rachel Eats, which led to the Guardian spotting you and giving you a weekly column in the Feast supplement. Just revisit that for a minute. You are in that bar, or that trattoria, and you're tasting that wonderful food that just reminds you of your granny in Oldham, and you're writing about it. Did you write about it for Rachel Eats?
Yeah, I did. I did. I wrote miles and miles. I sometimes feel like my blog is this haunting thing. It's all still there. That's another story from my first editor. She said to me, the great thing about you, Rachel, is you write everything 4 times. I'd written just the same thing again and again and again. But, I was putting together pieces. And then I think that's something I know that lots of us share. Going back, I have always enjoyed reading. And actually, I'm not even going to say food writing, because some of my favourite writing has always had food in it. And looking back, actually, while my absolute favourite food writer is Jane Grigson, and I love lots of people, but, Jane Grigson remains and I become more and more fervent in my feelings about her, because she She is just a wonderful writer and who tells wonderful sort of stories, but they're packed with history and geography and domesticity and philosophy and place and people, you know, isn't it packed in. So, and you know, so I was sort of joining in with that, I think. That was all the pieces started to come together. I've always felt that food writing's like making a jigsaw every day. And I wanted to make the jigsaws that mimicked my favourite writers. So, you know, I would have the recipe, and it always starts in the kitchen. Because that's the wonderful thing about food writing as well, is, I mean, I like to cook and I like to eat. So anything that ends up with dinner is great.
It's going to be in there.
And, you know, and so these containers, aren't they, for all of the things that interest me. I mean, I love it. And I love the history of the geography. I also like personal details. I mean, I'm nosy, I think, as we all are. Yeah. So, I mean, let me go back. When I doubt my writing in The Guardian, which I do all the time, I think, I have a sort of angel and devil. And I'd always think I'd get better at writing, but the more I write, the sort of more self-critical I become. Who the hell wants to know about, I don't know, you're sort of being ill, or somebody having spinach stuck in their teeth, or, you know, somebody smelling funny. But I think, well, I only write it because I think, well, that's what I want to know. And also that's what I remember. I mean, I don't remember the great sort of ornate story. I do remember the person that farted in the corner of the room. I do remember the food that smelled peculiar but tasted wonderful, you know, all those things. And so I hope that that's sort of along with the history and the geography.
And were all these people you were meeting in Testaccio
Farting? They were. No one must have.
No, that wasn't my question. Were they reading this? Did they know you? Because you settled there and you met Vincenzo fairly quickly, didn't you? You were pregnant with Luca. You were very established quite quickly. Did they know that you were writing this blog? Did they know that you'd been snapped up by The Guardian? Did they know you in that sense?
No, I don't think anyone's really that. No, people do now, I think. People know also that I've written about them for every now and then, you know.
But you do write about a lot of them.
Yeah, I do. I try and be careful. But Angela and Passy, we live above a bakery. Do you know the bakery Passy? The really traditional Roman house. And one day Angela was there, you know, having Google Translate. But I try and be careful I try and be respectful of the story.
Well, I mean, it's just that each book needs some kind of characters, and you bring it all to life so beautifully through your relationship. They're not just characters, but you have a relationship with them. You talk about the arguments you have with them. You talk about the moment when they can't remember your name, but then you talk about the people who really know you and save something for you because they know that you want it. And it brings the whole place to life. And I want to talk a little bit about Testaccio and the reason that you've called it 5 quarters. Testaccio is a quite extraordinary area of Rome. I remember when I went there last time, actually, I was doing some work there, and I said to my Roman friend who I was working with, I said, you know, where should I absolutely go that, you know, to get the real Rome? And she said Testaccio. So we went down there and breathed it all in. But without this, I mean, I read this and I think, oh my God, I would have had a totally different experience of Testaccio, because it's like a guidebook, but into the interior of a place. Tell us what's so extraordinary about Testaccio and why it's called 5 quarters.
Okay, perfect. It's like, I've always thought Testaccio is shaped like a piece of cheese. So it's a very ancient part of Rome. I mean, Rome is 2,753 years old. It's sort of got a beginning and a present day. But Testaccio this part of Rome was the ancient Roman port. So maybe the most significant thing in Testaccio is a hill made completely of broken terracotta pots. So at the height of the let's say the year 100, when huge amounts of olive oil are coming in from all over the empire, mostly from Spain, Andalusia. You know, we've got wheat coming in from Egypt, and we've got garum coming in from all over. The empire's big. Rome's the first city in the world to reach 1.5 million people. We've got a huge, hungry city to feed. All this stuff is coming down the river: lions, tigers, olive oil. 55 million amphora containing 50 litres of olive oil. I mean, that's a lot of olive oil. This wasn't just for salad, by the way. You know, we're not just dribbling. This is all for lights and scrubbing. So they had a problem with this olive oil, so they had to smash these pots, and they built a hill. And that hill is called Monte di Cocci. And that's the defining point of Testaccio. But basically, Testaccio was a sort of hill, bucolic. Think Hampstead Heath. brother town.
Common.
Yeah. Then this is another. I was still. My son's 12 now, so this is his level of history. So height of the empire, 1.5 million people. After the fall of the empire, over the next 300 years, Rome went to 20,000 people. I mean, this was plague and pest and this thing. Fast forward a few more years to unification, 1861, when Italy becomes a country. Italy's such a baby country, isn't it? And Rome becomes the capital. Testaccio becomes this brave new world. It's this new quarter for people coming in from mostly Abruzzo and Umbria. So this sort of countryside with a hill of broken pots becomes a working quarter for a city. Testaccio's lovely. It is shaped like a piece of cheese. It's got, the city wall, Via Marmorata, and then the river curves round as a piece of pecorino like that. And then it's a grid system. So it was built in around between 1861 and present day. And it was houses for workers, people working in the slaughterhouse, which was in Testaccio, and building the railway. So it's a very important. It was a new. All the streets are named after inventors and scaffolding and American presidents. And this quarter was filled with people coming in mostly from Abruzzo. Now that's really important. Abruzzo, back of the knee, because they brought food in. So Testaccio has always been a place of migrants. And so that's where you see this Cucina Romana, slaughterhouse, working people, slaughterhouse, lots of meat, lots of restaurants and lots of butchers. So Testaccio has this very distinct feeling. A lot of people who live there now are third generation Testaccini. There's plenty of newcomers too. A lot of butchers, a lot of restaurants. It's just a very edible part of the city. It makes me think it really is the intestines of the city, I think. And
which is what the 5 quarters actually refers to, that it's
perfect.
The 4 quarters of any animal are the bits that people will buy. And then there's the rest, which is the 5th quarter, which is the offal. And that was given to the workers as payment, really, wasn't it? And that's where a lot of the Cucina Romana really came from. It's this sort of ability to be creative with the stuff that everyone else throws away. Yeah. So you've got really extraordinary people there.
Yeah, and you've sort of summed up, I think, the sort of Roman cooking in a nutshell. It was resourceful cooking. Yeah. So yes, all the offal coming, and it really is. I mean, you do. Again, not romanticising. Rome is a very dynamic city. It's full of all sorts of cuisines. Romans aren't all sitting at home eating tripe. Having said that, it's still a fundamental. The oxtail, the tripe, the nervetti, like the cartilage. All these, the intestines, all these are still very much part of Roman cooking.
And what would you say is the difference between cucina povera, which is sort of the Italian poor people's cooking, across the whole of Italy, and cucina romana?
It's the same. It's like I was listening to your lovely interview with Giulia Scarpetta, who's written this beautiful book called Cucina Povera. She's Tuscan. She's a wonderful food writer. And it's resourcefulness is the thing that links us all. If there's one thing that defines Italian cooking, but actually global cooking is resourcefulness. And actually, I do go back to that. I think that really, I find the idealising of Italian cooking, and I say this with absolute love, a rather bizarre thing. Even though it's wonderful. I mean, I love it. But, we share these dishes are global dishes, aren't they? There's a fantastic food writer called Massimo Montanari who I couldn't write without. And he one of his greatest books is all about spaghetti and tomato sauce. Spaghetti from the Arabs and tomato sauce from America, came really late. Tomatoes, like 1800, the Italians started eating tomatoes seriously. And they came and they made this iconic dish. He really takes food history and makes it global all the time. It's like, he's always blowing it up, and I really love that. You can't write about any one food, can you, without connecting it to everybody? I think that's a very generous spirit. I really wandered off Cucina Povera then, didn't I? But anyway.
Well, no, absolutely. It's interesting that you talk about idealising, because I did want to read a rather beautiful couple of pieces that certainly the way that you everybody talks about your transportive prose, and it absolutely is. I mean, I'm sure you've all read Rachel's wonderful prose, but it really takes you to a place. You've written about Parmigiano Reggiano. If Parmigiano Reggiano is a smooth, sophisticated type with a history of art degree and a flat in Kensington, then Pecorino Romano is a bit of a rogue with an accent as thick as treacle, a great album collection, and plenty of charm. Could you write that way about cheddar?
I think you could.
I'm asking whether you could. I mean, you probably could. But it is about idealising the ingredients, and you do that. You write about each ingredient in that way, and I know that it's just a way of elevating a food and a particular sort of cucina, and it makes us salivate, doesn't it? I mean, I suppose it's up to every food writer to elevate a food and make us want it more and buy into the story around it. But I wonder, what role have you played in your area of Rome, in Testaccio, with your market, to kind of elevate the interest in that area? You must get loads of people coming to Testaccio looking for, Giancarlo and all the rest of them.
Yes. People do. I mean, I was so worry about that sometimes. I worry about whether I think my job now is to broaden. I feel that's my responsibility, is to write. In fact, I'm going to go home and write about cheddar. I'm going to write an ode to cheddar.
I want to see it in the next Guardian piece.
Which it deserves, doesn't it? It deserves an ode. So I think, I think that all the time. I started writing in Italy, and I have to sort of thank Rome for that. I feel, sort of profoundly affectionate about Rome. And I think I've been there 20 years in the same building. I think that's where I'll stay. But as I say, I kind of come back to the idea that I feel that something, coming and going from Rome, I feel just as at home here. I feel the two places are connected. I feel very glad that I can move back and forth, and very lucky. I feel very, I want us all to move around. I think my responsibility now is to just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. This next book, which is, I'm at a very bad moment. I'm recording this. They're my lovely publisher, Penguin. I'm doing this big book about the whole of Italy, which is also meant to be just a bit playful. 7 recipes about every region. It's ridiculous, but it's meant to be this playful dance around Italy. But obviously that means that you're looking at all, you're in the north, in Friuli, you're in Slovenia, you're in Austria-Hungary, you're in France, you're in Tunisia. Again, it just feels like I want things to be bigger and bigger and bigger, and to find more and more connections, because they're the things that make it, it's so interesting.
But you do say that you have to work hard at it. You write, in order to understand Rome, you must be physical, pound hard, touch, inhale, taste, and allow the city to work itself into you. Your enthusiasm for the market ingredients will make others cringe. And they do, you say. But it's about actually sort of going beyond, more than any one of us will do. And that goes back to my question about your responsibility as a food writer. When you say that in your book, do you mean us or do you mean you?
No, I think I mean us, and I think I mean all of us. I do feel that writing, in the way that I do is a very shared thing. I mean, The Guardian, and I hope this doesn't sound really pretentious, but I really feel that it's a community of people. Like, I know a lot of people. I mean, I've always feel that a lot of people who read my column are really wonderful cooks, travellers. I have people who read the column who are historians. I mean, that's the sort of greatest honour. I get so much feedback. We made, a while ago, I don't remember, they found that incredible, the new fresco in Pompeii of the Xenia, which looks really like a pizza. Did you see it? It's mental. It's like it's a dough base, and it's got red and white and pineapple on it. I mean, it's not pineapple because it's those little cordyceps, the strawberry fruits, but it looks like a bloody pizza margherita with pineapple on it. The crowd went wild. And The Guardian got me to make it at home. And it wasn't, it was basically, it's a Xenia, which is it's like a dono. You'd make it to give people great dates and figs and balls of cheese. But anyway, so I remade this pizza. It was wonderful. I mean, I tried to be quite accurate, but I got so many letters from eminent historians and archaeologists, and people who'd been there, people who were going to see it, and I just thought, this is why I do this. Yeah. It really is, because it's so enriching, and I really do learn from other people. So I feel it's this big communicator of travellers. And also, the thing about writing about place, I wish I did it better. I've just got Jane Grigson's Book of British Food. I found in Oxfam, where she went around the whole of England walking. It makes me want to walk around places and look at brick walls more. Look at the details, look at people. You can do it wherever you go. And I think, and this is what I love about your workshops, is that, because it's essentially, it's we share it, don't we? What better way? And I think food writing is so good at reminding us of how wonderful the details are.
Yeah.
aren't they? And how actually we all love the details. Stop trying to be grand and describe like everything. Tell me about that one trattoria or that one cafe and the owner and the smell and the floor and the tiles and the plate and the toothpick and the baked bean and the man in the corner and the, you know, I want that all the time. So I feel when I do it, like I'm doing it with all of us, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Let's go into your 4 food moments. Your first is the boiled beef, pressed tongue and tripe. Classic dishes that you've learned to cook in Rome, but also remind you of the northern food of your grandparents in your childhood. We talked about Oldham. It is very similar to your northern roots, but one of the things that I thought was interesting was that you talk about odori. Is that how you pronounce it? The smelly food. One of your lovely market guys calls it the smelly food. The carrots, celery, parsley stems, the fragrant herbs to make the tongue and other offal taste better. I mean, I did kind of read this, and I have to say I was force-fed offal as a child, which is why I find it a bit of a problem. But your Granny Phyllis had a tongue press. I mean, this is all very... We've talked a little bit about how familiar it was to you, but why did you choose that of all of the recipes in the book to really focus on? Say so much about you.
It's such a part of Roman food, the offal, and then remembering that Phyllis had this tongue press. She used to put 2 tongues in it, like a yin and yang, and then she'd press it down so it looked like a cake. And then we'd have it sliced. I mean, I really like tongue, actually, with green sauce. But I think, it was a way of linking up and thinking. And then also just thinking again about English food. Again, I'd gone to Italy. It seemed incredibly romantic. And actually, I realised that the interest for me lay in finding the similarities more than the differences. But yeah, me and my brother are still fighting over that tongue press. It's mine. Head away.
The Jewish ghetto. I mean, you haven't chosen this as your food moment, but I found that very interesting. I'd love to talk about that part of. It's just outside Testaccio, isn't it?
Mm. Round the curve of the river. If Testaccio is a piece of cheese, you curve up round. It's about. I mean, it's near. I mean, you can walk there in 10 minutes from Testaccio.
You talk about the Jewish ghetto as the early seat of cucina povera, largely because they didn't have access to many of the foods when the Jews were in the ghetto. Before we go into the deep fried courgette flowers and the other fried food that were in the ghetto, tell us a little bit about that. The way you describe the Jewish ghetto.
I mean, talking, and again, I want to be really sort of careful and thoughtful about this because I'm not an expert on Roman Jewish food, but I always think of Roman food as being like a road, like a motorway, and you've got all these inroads, these influences, that come in, and the Roman Jewish tradition is fascinating and profound and fundamental. There's been a Jewish community in Rome for centuries and centuries, and yes, you do see a lot of the traditional dishes. So all the fritto misto, that wonderful fried things, courgette flowers, and then often offal, brain, sweetbreads, bits of broccoli, but the cheapest, the poorest things, and of course we really see in Roman Jewish food the use of olive oil. I mean, Roman food it's all pork. It's pork fat. That's what things were fried in. The use of olive oil bizarrely is actually quite limited. I mean, olive oil in Italy is changed in the last 50 years. This idea that everyone's putting olive oil on their salad is just not the case. Rome basically was, but the Roman Jewish tradition used olive oil because you didn't eat pork. But all lovely, the use of salt cod, the use of anchovies and endivia baked together, all those wonderful soups and stews. So the Roman Jewish tradition is strong, and of course it's guided by, I suppose, sort of rules around eating. So there's a really beautiful. Can we do a reading list afterwards? There's a beautiful book by Silvia Minalti about Roman Jewish food, which I really recommend if anyone's interested. But it's an vital vein of Roman food. So when you go in a pizzeria and you have a fiori di zucca, the courgette flour filled with mozzarella and anchovies, or you have a piece of salt cod battered and fried. I mean, so English. Or you have that wonderful dish of baked anchovies with endivia. That's the Roman Jewish tradition. So
extraordinary.
Yeah,
I had no idea about that. I haven't heard that before.
But actually, I think I should be called. I'm apologise. I think we should be calling also it should be calling it the piazza, as opposed to the ghetto. But anyway, so I apologise that that's what I called it in the book. But I'm always learning and always making mistakes.
But you did choose the deep fried courgette flowers. The very best way to start a meal, habits and rituals. Now that goes back to the Jewish tradition, but it's also a very it's a very specific thing to Italian cuisine, isn't it? And it's about the thing that gives the food and the habits and the rituals that give an identity to a community.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and also fried things. I mean, fried things. But we share that, don't we? Like fritti, like just. I always think that antipasti have a real advantage, an unfair advantage, don't they? You know, you're hungry. It's the beginning of a meal. You're really excited. You've got a glass of wine. Someone gives you a plate of fried food. I mean, you know, it just... I will one day, I'm never going to open it, but my fantasy restaurant would be a little bar that just serves sparkling wine and big platters of, like, fried Roman things. I mean, yum. So that I just...
Do it. Absolutely, will be that.
And it is, but you find them all over Italy. Most regions have some sort of fritto misto, mixed fried things. So I did suggest to my publisher that I did a whole book on that, but sadly,
really,
I'm just too ahead for them. They'll commission me in 20 years.
Your third food moment is making pasta. Now, this reminds you of your childhood, actually. Again, it's these connections. But it's also about bringing Vincenzo in. And I love the way that you talk about how he tells you how to make pasta. And you've been making pasta all your life, but there's the unknowing. I love that bit as well. I love the idea of, you know, I've talked to people a lot about how talking in a different language gives you a different sense of self. You know, being in a different country, obviously, you know, you create yourself again, and you've done it not just in language but in your cooking as well. So tell us, before you talk about your childhood memories, about you and Vincenzo kind of in that communication about how to basically boil pasta.
Yeah, no, actually that is a true story, and I want to choose my words carefully with that thing, but it was early on. I mean, I've been cooking pasta forever, and Vincenzo's very atypical. He's Sicilian, but he's not particularly sort of macho Italian. I would say not that he likes food, but he's not that tight to food. He's certainly not someone who was correcting me all the time. I mean, he's just as happy in England as he is. So I feel I want to sort of make that very clear. And he would hate it if I painted him as some. However, when it came to pasta, I remember quite early on cooking it. And he's really nice as well. He's gentle, Vincenzo, but like he did. I remember just, you know, I needed to learn to cook pasta. And I remember asking him, and he was like, you know, use a bigger pan, use more water, use more salt, do that. I mean, for fuck's sake, can't I what? But I did have to learn to cook pasta. So I did. There are, you know, you can break them. I mean, there's any rule is to me to break them. But, you know, I learning to cook pasta, you know, a bigger pan, a litre of water for every 100 grams of pasta, 10 grams of salt for everything, you know, bring it to the boil, stir it, you know, all that stuff. So I did learn to cook pasta again with Vincenzo, and he was right. It is better. But I repeat, you know, every rule is there to be broken. But yeah, that was a real bone of contention, that pasta, because that was where he really came over all Italian and sort of. And also, I did realise that I was massively overcooking pasta, and I was quite annoyed with myself for that as well. I mean, again, you can cook the pasta however you like. You know, it wasn't that.
Can you? Well, that you can. Yeah. And making it, he kind of, was it Vincenzo or Vincenzo's mother who told you how to do it from the hips? And of course, that's the way to make a dough, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, that's not so much Vincenzo's mum, actually, but various people. But I have a really wonderful teacher called Rina Folletti for the pasta book, and she taught me how to make fresh pasta. And actually, interestingly, I wasn't particularly interested in making fresh pasta. And when I did the pasta book, initially it was just going to be a book about dried pasta, because that's what I eat. And I mean, they're just different. But actually, I did Rina, who's in Emilia-Romagna, where they have there's fresh pasta all over Italy, you know, different. There's 1,300 shapes. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Ace pasta.
Yeah. But she taught me to make it. And actually it is, you know, it's like making pastry, isn't it? You know, it's quite physical, isn't it? Or making bread.
And rhythmic.
If you use your body, it's a lot less effort. So I think, yeah.
I love that. I love that image of, you know, because I mean, you know, you do spend 10 minutes, don't you, kind of doing that thing, getting into your hips.
Or you're a bocker, you make, you know, like, you learn that there, don't you? That, you know, actually, if you use your body like it did, it's a lot less effort.
No, you wanted to talk about making it as a child, and that's how you kind of felt that connection, because you were given dough to play with in the kitchen as a child.
I think that was it. I think just remembering, making children are good at making pasta, aren't they? I mean, pasta just means paste, mix any flour and any liquid, because that's what it was in the beginning. I mean, you see pasta made with every sort of flour and mix them together. Tell a child to make a dough with which they can make worms or rings or bogies, and they will do it, and they will do it. So I think that's, it's a good reminder as adults that actually it's a playful thing, and actually if you do use your instinct and sort of play with it and play around, then actually that's that's the best way to learn to make pasta. That's certainly how I learned to make pasta, and still how I make pasta actually. I make a lot of fresh pasta. Which is quite interesting, because I always thought it was too much work, but I think of it now like making pastry. And very often I don't make pastry, like I'll buy it or but if I want to make pasta, it's a quick, playful thing.
Yeah. Your fourth food moment is really interesting. I was talking to Julia Crouch recently about the blue zones and the Mediterranean diet, and her book is called The Happiest Diet in the World. And the first thing she says is about Italians' attitude to sweet things. And it's about celebration, and it's about joy, and it's just not so screwed up about sugar as we are, because they've got it right. And I love the fact that you've chosen this for your fourth food moment, because it's not just grattachecca, the grated ice with syrup on a hot summer night. It's about a whole part of Italian culture, isn't it? You eat and then you go out and you promenade, and you go and have a gelato, and it is about a curious relationship with sweet.
Yeah, I think that's I think they do have a sort of better relationship. What I wonder if it is, and I'm generalising, is that generally, and I am generalising, that I think because there's a more a sort of rounded view about food, so that you have everything. But I'm not talking about that idea of a bit of everything. I think because the structure of meals and the sort of habits around food in Italy, remember, it's much more recent. That sort of history is a younger country in those ways. I think there's sort of room for everything. So, you have a meal and you sit down and you have the bread there, and the bread's there because the bread's to wipe the plate and to use the fork. And then there's maybe a bit more structure in meals. And again, I'm not idealising, because there's just the same problems in Italy as there are here, but in schools, kids still get their first course and their second course, the breakup of meals, the thing you have something sweet at the end. I wonder whether it being a more complete thing, the idea that you have a bit of everything, has maintained this idea that you have a bit of everything. So it does. It's interesting, isn't it? I offer more of that. I do think the sort of gelato, the ice things are pretty extraordinary. That they are still considered like an important daily food group. And the gelateria, you do see everyone like the bar. It's classless, it's ageless, it's that everyone just has. Also, gelato. Another thing is it's like a health food, isn't it? I mean, gelato is a whipped food. It's milk, so it's very light. But I mean, you stand outside the gelateria and you'll see everyone there, your granny, your nephew, your police officer, your road sweeper. 27 tourists,
because it's made from scratch.
Good. I wish we did it here. I mean, I just think, I don't understand why we don't all eat more ice cream.
Yeah.
Just all the time.
And normally I would fade out on that, because that's a great way to end. I'm going to pass it on to the audience now for a Q&A. My glamorous assistant, Lulu, will be passing around the microphone. Please wait until she has it under your nose. Sharon, over there?
Rachel, that was wonderful. I wonder if you had to eat one Italian food and you can only choose one for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I think it might be, and I would regret this, wouldn't I? Because you regret your decision. But I think probably pasta fagioli, like pasta and beans. I just feel that would see forever, just that one thing.
Just that one.
I think I'd get bored of it and I'd hate myself, but I think that would see me through. I want to say ice cream or fried things, but I think that would also nutritionally be sound, and I do love it. I do love it, and I think I'd be a sort of super. I'd be sort of a super granny on it. So
it is the healthiest food in the world.
I love that. Thank you.
Who's next?
Hi, thank you. I've really enjoyed the talk. I love your column. I read it whenever I buy the paper, and then I go, I'm definitely going to make that. And then life gets in the way, and I don't. And we don't have markets like they do in Italy. But also, do the women or the people who cook in the family have the time to do all the preparation? Some of the dishes take, a really long time to cook, and I'm just always busy. And I wonder if it's a different, is it a different way of thinking in Italy around that?
I think that's a brilliant question. And I think a lot of people don't have the time. And I'm very aware that I'm a food writer who is at home all day and paid to cook. Because I'm not sure, I'm going to say that now, I'm not sure I would cook the way I did if I wasn't paid to. I mean, I love cooking, but it's my job. So I'm very aware of that. I think that it is a bit different there. I think that the setup of things still, whether it's the sort of social structure and the availability of ingredients, the availability of ready prepared ingredients, in the case that on my market, or Testaccio market, that's an ordinary market, even more another market you buy ready chopped up pumpkin, you buy green beans with the tops and tails taken off them, you can buy a minestrone mix. There's plenty of ready food there as well. And there's plenty of fast food in supermarkets. No, I don't think people do have time. And I think a lot of this romanticising about Italian cooking and people making 3-course meals really gets in the way of all of us. Having said that, I do think that there are still, for other reasons, whether it be the structure of families, time, maybe people not working in the same way, or the role of grandparents, for example. People live near each other. Grandparents maybe are subsidised by their children to look after grandchildren. So then, I think all those things, I think a lot proximity, maybe people living closer, particularly the grandparent thing. I can just only speak from my own experience, but I was at school. I don't have either sets of grandparents nearby, but a lot of the kids would go home to grandparents' house for lunch. And so there would still be a grandmother who may or may not, she may well have been a teacher as well, but she might have been buying, ready prepared chicken breast from the butcher. But I think that setup means that people are maybe cooking, I'm not saying more, but differently. Did that make sense, that answer? But I'm so interested in this, and I'm really aware of
it's changing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, Giulia Scarpileggio was talking about her mother not being able to cook, but she learned from her grandmother, her nonna. And so the nonna is taking the place that the mother used to, because the mothers are going to work. And often going into the cities, so they can't get back for lunch. So that whole, the shape of the day has changed.
But I think it's a really interesting question. Yeah, I think it's just set up differently. But I think people have found ways of managing it. For example, like the kids still finish school at 2:00, and so there's plenty of people that's an absolute nightmare for. It really is, and problems for kids. But that means that there's still a lot of people. You have to find a way of. My son comes home for lunch. So I think those things force maybe different rhythms. And then there's plenty of amazing people like there are in Italy cooking, amazing 3-course meals every day. I mean, I'm certainly not,
And the junk food industry has really got its hold down.
But I do think it's such a good question. And I do think some of the romanticising, and I hold myself responsible to that, is getting in the way of that. It gets in the way of proper discussions, doesn't it, about how we feed ourselves and our families and the privilege we have, if you've got money and all those things. So I think it's a really important discussion that should be had more.
Yeah. Next question.
Hi. Looking at the weather we've had, I can totally tell you why we have to have ice cream. But looking at your book, I get the feeling that the good Roman home cooks have chosen a limited palette from which they cook beautifully. So would you cook sort of Roman food within a family, as in your example of having gnocchi every Thursday? And in a way, we don't. So if you're a Guardian, the Guardian Feast supplement, you've got ottolenghi, you might have something Indian, might have something Palestinian, Ukrainian. Do you think we've lost something by that it takes us more time to cook? Because there's so many options.
Yeah, no, I don't think we have lost something. I think we gain. I think we gain from essentially what you're saying about Roman cooks, and again, I do sometimes regret things I wrote 10 years ago. Not that I don't, I think that I did my own share of romanticising about how many people eat gnocchi on a Thursday. Having said that, they sell it in shops on a Thursday. Trattorias still sell it. You can buy it ready-made. It's encouraged. You still in the shops, they still soak chickpeas on a Friday. So I can buy bag of ready chickpeas and a piece of salt cod that's already soaked. So that's my instant food. So I do think there's a lot of rhythm around Roman food. But there's also plenty of experimenting in Rome. But no, I think we only enrich by having more variety. And I was going to say, I think there needs to be a new book about contemporary Roman cooking, what people are actually cooking at home, because I think there's a lot more. And it's not surprising that, for example, Ottolenghi's books become increasingly successful in Italy. I think there's so much to be said for those sort of rhythms, aren't there, and rituals. I mean, and again, we do it so well we have them in England. We're not very good at patting ourselves on the back for them, are we? We don't celebrate ourselves in the same way that the Italians do, which is a shame, I think.
Molly, over here.
I've actually got 2 questions. So the first question, I think definitely in the UK and just this parts of the world, some traditional Italian cooking is almost demonized, like, oh, can't eat pasta every day, it's unhealthy, or this, that and the other. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm imagining in Italy they don't have those perceptions about food being good or bad, or it's not really talked about in that way. It's just more seen as a wholesome sort of family thing. So that's the first question. And then the other one, as a food writer, you're constantly surrounded by food and always cooking. Do you ever have decision fatigue around food when cooking for yourself, or there's so many options and cookbooks and things out there? Where do I even start? And then
get a takeaway.
Any thoughts about that? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, great. So the first part, I think the same. There's the same concept, just maybe a different configuration. I think the same anxieties around there. But again, coming back to that idea that maybe the problems are less acute, because there is still this idea of a sort of complete meal, the many elements. Although, I mean, I would say that there's the same problems bubble under the surface about anxiety around food and where food comes from, all that thing. So I think it's the same in Italy. Around food, but all the time. But in life, I feel really bad about that because, as I say, I'm a food writer who's paid to do it. We have a lot of, I eat quite a lot of yogurts, fruit, and my son eats quite a lot of the same thing again and again and again. If I test the Guardian recipe 3 times, so everyone gets fatigue. Like, no, my partner doesn't eat meat, so and things go wrong quite a lot. So I quite often see my poor 12-year-old son sitting at the table eating some bad recipe that you will never see, so we do. And I really do. It's hard work cooking for a family, like, every day.
What about a signature dish? I've talked to lots of people about this. Georgie Hayden was saying that she feels really bad that she's got 2 young girls who literally don't know what their mother's signature dish is because she's constantly recipe testing. She's cooking such a wide variety of, Greek Cypriot food that there's nothing that they would know is her own. Do you have that?
I hope that both members of my family would say that I'm very good at frying and very good at frying things. I'm very keen on frying things. And I think the signature also is more Vincenzo. He does make a really, really good pasta with tomato sauce. And mine probably roast potatoes, roast and mashed potatoes and battered things.
Go on, give us your best mashed potato. It's not very Roman, is it?
No. I make a lot of them.
Oldham.
I just don't know how to do it. I use the potato ricer, and I often go through twice, and butter, and then a little bit of olive oil. But I beat it. But I like a nice area, and just really good roast potatoes. But I mean, I don't know if I'm really good at anything. I mean, I'm always full of doubt. I would say my batter. I think my batter, and I've got a new batter, and I'm not joking. I will
literally,
and I will write a whole book about covering things in batter and frying them, and then you have to eat them where they're so hot that they're serious. And there'll be a whole thing about Italy, and there'll be a whole thing about England. It'll have everything in there: Saint leaves and Mars bar. It'll be the great title.
Thanks for listening, and there are more questions and answers from that first Cooking the Books live at Rockwater Hove over on my Extra Bites on Substack. Click on the link in the show notes to find it and to that extra reading Rachel mentioned. Stay tuned for Melissa Hemsley on Cooking the Books live and news of a regular monthly series later in the year. And I'll see you next week.